Art and photography are two advanced level subjects by Pontypridd High School and Hawthorne High School. In this particular PowerPoint, we will be looking at Art and Design AS and A2 level. The subject is split into three separate units. The first unit you do in Year 12, and that's called a Creative Inquiry. This unit is expected to show students different ways of experimenting with materials and trying to broaden their artistic knowledge in a number of different areas. But then later on in the year, you're expected to concentrate on a specific unit that you specialize in and follow the work of artists to inspire you towards a creative outcome. So the AS level is just one unit, and the aim is to be as experimental as possible to begin with, learn different processes, and then produce a small unit towards the end of the year on the subject of identity. At A2 level in art, in Year 13, there are two separate units. One is a personal investigation, which is similar to the Year 12 work, where you are looking at working on a theme, except this time the pupils choose their own theme that they work with, and also they're expected to go into things a little bit more deeply and to try and refine and develop work a little bit more. And alongside this, pupils are expected to do a written 1,000 to 2,000 word small thesis to back up the project work that they're undertaking. And then finally, in the February of the final year of the pupils are in school in Year 13, they will get titles from the WJC, and that will signal the start of the exam unit, where pupils pick a title to work through and again follow a similar process of investigating artists, experimenting, developing and refining ideas towards a final piece, which they then evaluate and compare back to the artist they've looked at. So that pattern is on all of the three units, and overall the entire A level is 2 units in Year 13 and 1 in Year 12. Our subject mission statement, I suppose, would be the mission of the subject is to use creative techniques at a skilled and inventive level to investigate artistic styles and go on to create new outcomes relevant to the people and the world we live in. What is involved in Art AS and A level, I've more or less said that on the previous slide, but just in case, I've kind of gone into it in more detail here, which you can read through those three sections to get an idea about what's required and what you're expected to do. Subject careers connected with art and design are very broad indeed. As I've said there, an A level in art and design can be a gateway to many creative higher qualifications and careers. The creative thought process and innovative thinking are valued very highly by universities and employers. In an ever-changing world, the creative mind is a valuable asset and can lead to many satisfying and valuable careers. Creative industries such as graphic design, 3D design, fashion design, interior design, architecture and game design, to name but a few, all value an advanced level qualification in this subject. Beyond this, companies of any kind value the creative person who can think outside the box and show they can investigate in order to create something new. As I've said at the bottom there, ultimately art and design can offer a career option that is rewarding mentally and financially, because you're creating new things and hopefully having a large personal involvement in what you're pushing forward. You're very much in control of your own learning in that sense. Subject assessment, I've split into two sort of areas really. We do formal assessment and informal assessment really. Informally, I would say pupils are encouraged to share and talk about the work they produce, so we would have critiques and share ideas, sometimes with the whole class, or sometimes just on a table or in pairs. This can provide a good way for pupils to assess the quality of ideas and skills by looking and comparing books during lesson times. It can also give pupils ways to improve and develop work towards a higher grade. Secondly, then, we as staff will sit with pupils individually and go through small levels of assessment and target setting to try and push their ideas further, and see if there's ways we can improve. For example, these chats might encourage pupils to look at all the assessment objectives, whereas someone who might have been concentrating a lot on drawing and doing really A-grade work with that might be missing out because they haven't studied an artist or done analysis in other sort of areas. So the aim here with this sort of assessment and guidance and target setting is to keep all the plates spinning so that all assessment objectives are being met, not necessarily just the skills objective. Then on a more formal basis, pupils will be given regular progress and effort grades as well as success grades to aspire to based on their work to date. And then finally, folder work will be formally assessed in May and the results sent to the WJC, who then send an external moderator to check and regulate marks given by tutors on the 4 assessment objectives. Subject achievement. Traditionally, results in both AS and A-level art and design have been consistently good over recent years from both Hawthorne High School and Pontypridd High School. It's a real strength of both departments, the results that they achieve, and also the creative people that they send forward onto university. This is largely down to good course structure, good assessment, both formal and informal, as I've mentioned, contact with home, and finally, and most importantly, down to the committed pupils with a real love for the subject, working alongside excellent staff who know how to encourage and push people to get the best out of them. The subject teams at Hawthorne High School currently is myself, Mr. James Cox, teacher in charge of art, and Mrs. Alison Lambert. And at Pontypridd High School, currently it's Mrs. Gill Evans, Head of Art, Mrs. Michelle Madley, and Mr. Craig Husband. So there's a good diverse selection of talents there and different specialisms for pupils to use and improve from. Subject expectations. Obviously I said in that first paragraph there that it is a big commitment, A-level. I think it's one of the biggest jumps in education. Going from GCSE to A-level, I always think is a higher jump than going from A-level to university. So it's important that pupils hit the ground running and hit the ground expecting to work hard and to really push themselves. I've put there pupils will need to be organised enough to be working regularly and entering each lesson with evidence of progress made from the previous lesson. This is important so that the free time between lessons is used effectively. Much of the work is to be completed in A3 sketchbooks, although that's not always exclusively the case, but mostly. Sometimes pupils opt for a book used for experimentation and techniques at the AS level, and then a second book for the identity project. However, some pupils combine all of this into one larger book depending on how they like to structure it. In lessons, pupils are expected, as I said, to settle to work quickly, whether this is a mini skills task which is delivered by the teacher where they listen, take on the advice and then try and apply it, or if they're carrying on with their own personal identity unit. Commitment and self-determination are vital if pupils are going to improve. Outside of lesson time, and this is the bit which makes a difference between the E grades and A grades at A level, I think, pupils will need to be developing and refining the project work at home to give the unit the depth it needs at this advanced level. The moderators expect to see a lot of depth, especially at year 12 where it's only one large scale unit. They do expect to see lots of development. Say for example you're doing portraits, Then with portraits, for example, they'd expect to see lots of different attempts at portraits using different materials, and then those attempts to be refined and taken forward. It is almost impossible to achieve an A-level grade if no work is undertaken in the pupil's own time. Finally, written work will need to go alongside practical work at this level. Pupils will be expected to make notes explaining the processes involved on each page and reflect on how the work is developing. There is also a big requirement for pupils to critically analyse the work of artists and to be able to mention these artists through compare and contrast evidence as the folders develop and in the evaluation at the end. Finally, what will you need to get for yourself if you were going to take A-level art? Pupils really need to get ideally 2 sketchbooks, A3 sketchbooks with good thick cartridge paper. I put 120 GSM, that's grams per square meter, plus. So if you can get a thickness that level of thickness or thicker would be better for taking paint, pastels and all the things that we might be throwing at the book. I think any thinner paper might sort of disintegrate over the year, so it's worth getting sketchbooks with ideally a ring bound sketchbook that's A3 with good quality paper. Then a set of shade pencils is always very useful, so they're sharp and ready to go. It can save time in lessons. Of course, we do have these things in school, but it's in the pupils' advantage really to try and get hold of those, so they got them there straight away. Also with paint brushes, so they're not looking for brushes. It can be handy if they have 2 fine paint brushes on them for detailed work. Again, though, we do have those things in school. And then an A2 plastic folder. You can get the zippy black folders, which are a bit more expensive, but an A2 plastic folder, we have got some in school, but if you wanted to get your own as well, that's fine. It's just for transporting work safely and keeping things dry and flat. It's also useful, I put at the bottom, for pupils to have access to a colour printer at home to print out research work and also photos they take of real life sources and processes, so they can go straight into the books, because collecting evidence of how your processes are going along and also collecting evidence of things from real life that you photograph and then sketch can get really big marks with the exam board. So having a printer to print out some of these things is really useful if possible. If not, it's up to the pupil to be really organised and to try and print the work in school, which is another option. That's all I really need to say. You can get in touch with me by email through the school, or I'm sure you could get in touch with your teachers up in Pontby High as well to find out any more information if you need it. But like I said, it is a great A-level where we get good results, but we do expect good commitment and hard work. There's no way of getting it without those 2 things. So thanks for listening.